people. It's like garbage.
Has Pam never presented since she been here?
Heck no.
What? Has Pam never presented
Okay.
since she worked here?
Well,
Can I make a suggestion that
No,
for
I
somebody
didn't.
coming to present?
Is she typical
Guidance,
15, 20
it
minutes?
should be 10 minutes or less.
hour.
Yeah,
I think we should say it's
Usually
I love her to
45
death,
minutes.
but she's
Usually
pretty
45
long.
minutes.
Like, if you can't get across that, hey, we're the garbage guys, we're doing a good job.
Okay, we're live.
We can be garbage truck drivers.
Okay, welcome back to our work meeting. We will jump to item 2.4, update to Title 7, Chapter 8. Anthony. Thank you for waiting this out, Anthony.
Oh, thanks for having me here tonight. So we just got a couple updates to the parks, trails, and open space ordinances we want to go over. And then following that, there's a few things related to Blackridge Reservoir that I've kind of lumped in here that we'll just present to you for your consumption and digestion, because we're going to bring some of this back to you in December as well. So we'll just get to that, some of that information regarding parking options up there. So to jump into it, we'll start with some park ordinance updates that we've got here. As we've been reviewing Chapter 8 of Title 7, we've come up and identified maybe a few deficiencies or things that need to be updated in our ordinances. First off, we've had a lot of discussion pertaining to the hours of operation in our parks and our park facilities. Currently, they're kind of all over the board, which makes it difficult for our enforcement. Number one, we've had some issues with enforcement. Number two, we'd like to get our signage and our sign plan up to date and get everything consistent. So what we're proposing here is to open all of our facilities at 7 a.m. and they close at 10 p.m. So that the hard closure date, some of them are dawn to dusk, or 7:30 to dusk, or 7:30 to 10, or 7:30 to 9. They're kind of all over the board, like I said. So there has been some discussion on the 7 a.m. opening, whether that's maybe not early enough. So we'd be interested in hearing your thoughts if we think that's sufficient.
Are we having issues previous to 7 a.m. at parks? I don't think an opening hour is really critical.
It's your closing hour.
It's a closing hour, because if you're at the park earlier, you're physically working out or you're doing something proactive.
Proactive and productive, you're not
Walking the
causing
dog,
issues.
doing something.
Yep, the only thing I do like about the seven, it kind of follows along with our noise ordinance, right?
True. There
And
you
so
go.
I like that, because if it ever is an issue, that it's in harmony with the noise.
What about staffing? Do we do anything to open parks?
We do. Right now, that's one of the reasons why we have a 7:30 opening at the dog park, because our staff usually arrives around 7, gives us a few minutes to get here, get things going and get out. But we've talked about that, and we don't think it'll be a problem to either adjust some schedules or get people here on kind of an on-call rotation where they would just show up at
Their first stop
6:30
there.
or so. That would be their first stop. They would just open the few gates or parks that we have that need to be open by 7 o'clock. We're also working with our facilities staff to put auto locks on all of our restrooms that we have out there, so we won't have to go around and open all those restrooms manually. So we're trying to put
What
those.
fiber will do for you?
I mean, that opening hour gives people an expectation of when restrooms will be open and so when those gates unlocked. If people wanna go there earlier, no, we're not gonna run them down and give them a ticket because they're.
Just
But they can't get into the dog
They just
park,
know
they
they
can't get
can't get
into
into the
like
locked
Butterfield
stuff
or
until-
unforeseen complication in that.
Currently with our
If it's-
restrooms, we, sorry, I didn't cut it off, but we currently, most of them don't open till 9 o'clock, or at least that's what the posted time is. And we have a lot of requests from runners that are out in the morning, they'd like to see those open earlier, so that'll give us a chance to open those earlier for them as well. So there's added benefit there, so.
Just unintended consequences sometimes. So this idea of 10 p.m. and you're gonna put automatic locks. What about all the summer activities out of Butterfield that go late? People wanna use restrooms and stuff going on.
And some kids in there.
So it's based on event permit, right? So
Uh,
our city events, or if we issue an event permit to someone like
Got it.
baseball, for example, or
Yes.
football, and they're running over, we're not gonna shut it down, right?
Okay.
We'll have to look at locations like that, and maybe we'll keep manual locks on those and we'll have the auto locks, or we'll just have to program the auto locks to not lock at that particular time too, so.
But you can always get out, right? We're not gonna lock somebody in.
Yep, there's always there's a button inside, they just push, they're able to get out.
Simple question, just simple people.
Plenty of water.
Okay, so, the next item was, so Todd looked over our ordinance and decided, he could eliminate some of the wordiness there, so.
Aren't you proud of me? An attorney eliminated wording
Trying to eliminate wording, so, but it doesn't change anything in the ordinance necessarily. It just has an overarching term at the beginning of the ordinance that says the following is not or not allowed, or excuse me, it is prohibited, and then it lists everything that is prohibited underneath that statement, rather than every item saying this is prohibited, this is not allowed. So it just eliminates wordiness. We would like to add text to which prohibits private instruction or group classes. We've seen that in some of our parks where a private group or a for-profit group is there holding classes or instructional courses or something of that nature. So we thought, maybe get your thoughts on that, if that's
We could do that.
appropriate or not.
Yeah, I mean, I rolled into Rosecrest Pavilion one night and there was an entire karate class going on under there. We had no idea that they were there. We also see it at some of our tennis courts. If they want to do something where they rent the space from the city, that's a different conversation than just going out there and monopolizing the space, right?
That was gonna be my question is, cause I see these soccer stuff, right? So a lot of these coaches are trying to make a living, so they do individual trainings or whatever. I see it in that little triangle drainage piece on, out by us all the time. If that's an issue, right, then they can just reserve the space, pay the rental fee.
Perfect. So another item that I didn't get on this slide, I apologize, but it is pertaining to overnight parking at our parks facilities and parking lots. We're seeing an issue with that. Juniper Canyon that just opened up, we're already seeing overnight parking there, the dog park. So if you're all on board, we would like to add some verbiage in the ordinance that would prohibit overnight parking in our park.
That'll have signage.
It's
and
already
signage and everything.
there, it's already in the ordinance, it's just not clearly, it's not real clear.
Bold,
That makes
italics.
Yeah, but it is there.
And then education and enforcement is gonna be fun,
Right.
right?
The next items pertain more to trails and amendments or additions to the trails code. So we would like to basically prohibit all motorized vehicles on all of our trails. That's our primitive trails and our asphalt trails or urban trails, except for class 1 e-bikes, and I'll talk more about that. City maintained and maintenance and emergency vehicles, and then any motorized wheelchairs or other mobility assist devices. So back to the e-bike classifications. So there's basically three classifications of e-bikes. There's class 1, class 2, and class 3. We're proposing that we allow class 1 e-bikes, which are pedal assist e-bikes. They don't have a throttle, and their maximum speed is 20 miles an hour. They could go faster if you can pedal faster than that. However, the assist portion of that bike won't allow it to go above 20 miles per hour. And then the the motor power limit is 750 watts. So that is the kind of the definition in state statute of a class 1 e-bike. And that is what we're proposing we allow. Now, class 2 and class 3, I'll go over these, and these are what we wouldn't allow on our trails. A class 2 e-bike is a throttle assist e-bike. So it has a throttle, you twist that throttle and you can take off. You don't need to pedal to get that bike moving. So some of these class 2 e-bikes are essentially kind of like a motorcycle. They'll travel up to 20 miles per hour, and they have a motor power limit again of 750 watts.
So that's the same.
It's not the same.
Only
It has a
they have
throttle.
It has a throttle.
Yeah, no
Yes.
pedal.
No, it
You
doesn't
don't have to
require
pedal.
pedal
But the
to
miles per
assist.
hour is the same and
And
so
the
is
wattage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. And then the class 3, again, is a pedal assist only. It does not have a throttle, but it has a maximum speed of 28 miles per hour. So the high speed is why we would not want to see these on our trails. And back to class 2, the reason we wouldn't want to have those on our trails is they tend to do more damage, and people tend to lose control on those a little bit more because of the torquiness of the motor, and they just take off and accelerate too fast, which causes more accidents and causes more damage to the trails. So, and again, those back to class 3, they have a max motor power limit of 750 watts. So we would like to see any e-bikes limited to a class 1 e-bike on our trails. And all these have also, we run all this through our trails committee, and they're all on board with all this as well. So
So I have a question about that.
Sure.
Because I actually was talking to somebody about a very specific e-bike.
Okay.
It's a very popular company called Volcon. They make a lot of electrical vehicles. They have a particular bike that has different modes. And so mode 1, 750 watt motor, right? Pedal assist, maximum battery life. This mode, minimal assistance from the motor, a little easier, but the throttle will not engage, which is compliant with in class 1. But it also has the ability to go, you have an active throttle, and this one, the throttle is way more active, right? And then you have a motorcycle, right? Like, it's the same bike, but it has the modes to be able to operate appropriately with compliance.
Sure.
How do we deal with something like that?
We just.
Technology's gonna
Instead
outrun
of call
our
it
ordinance
class
and
one
codes a lot.
e-bikes, we just, they can't have throttle assist or, we can just classify it like you just described, that they have.
Yeah.
I
It's
think from
really
I think from a code enforcement standpoint, as long as it can't go above the class 1, even though it has the option of going to that. Cause if we have a code enforcement officer, or police officer go out there, they can just say, oh, I was in mode 1.
Yeah, but are you
But then,
being in a
maybe
position,
really-
visually representation 20 miles an hour on a trail system? It's tough. I mean, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know.
So if the classification of the bike it doesn't allow for you to go above a class 1, then that's an easy, you can't have that bike on this trail. So that's just from a code enforcement standpoint, prosecution.
Honestly, just the discussions that I've heard, I think the state legislature is gonna have some discussions about this and what they will or will not allow cities to prohibit on trails. So we may be,
Trail.
Modifying
Yeah.
it based on.
Where does this land with other
We're right in line with other cities, so we modeled, our proposed ordinance after, Park City, Draper, Provo and Orem were kind of the four main ones that we looked at, and state statute as well.
Then what about scooters or skateboards or one wheels or?
They were, well,
Is that all-
as what we're proposing, they would all fall under, motorized vehicles, so. we
Those would all be
prohibit-
or those would all be prohibited currently.
so it says any motor vehicle, motor-driven cycle, motorcycle, mini motorcycle, motor scooter, motorbikes, snowmobiles, full-size all-terrain vehicle, off-highway vehicle, speed vehicle, moped, electric assisted bicycle or golf cart. Did you get all that? No golf carts?
About electric scooters.
Well, that would
Electric
be,
skateboards.
yeah, that's in that, yeah.
One wheels.
Oh, man, that's,
So,
Okay.
any more discussion on that, any thoughts?
Anthony, the time limit is not for the trail system, is that right?
Right.
10 o'clock, that was stay open.
Correct.
I'm on the wait list to see if I can go.
Okay. Nothing more on that?
That's what I'm asking.
Steve's got one already coming. He was talking to his wife, when that other person he was talking about the e-bike with, it was his wife.
No.
Oh, she doesn't know that.
It was the salesman.
A buddy of mine is buying an e-bike. He's getting his kids e-bikes for Christmas, and
Yeah.
they were talking about it, and we were discussing motors and power and
Yeah.
speeds and charging, and I said, well, I found this one's got different modes, and he goes, oh, that's interesting, because all the other ones have like a specific classification for how that bike is, rather than the various modes you can function in. So it's kind of like an all or nothing for most of them.
It is,
So,
yeah. 1,000-watt motors and all kinds of fun stuff.
yeah, 1,500 watt motors, dual 1,500 watt motor, this is on one.
Like, yeah.
Okay, so, the next, recommendations are more pertaining to our primitive trails. But we would like some verbiage in the code that would, prohibit, building and modifying, any trails. Also, trail users should stay on designated paths as much as possible. Also, trail use is discouraged when excessive mud is present, and trail users are to practice good trail etiquette and yield to others in an appropriate manner. So, just some added verbiage there to kind of bolster.
Do we have like the manner they should yield to?
We do have that on some signs and,
Okay.
and again.
Would we
if-
add that into the
If we
code?
get this passed, then we would make sure that we're kind of signing that a little more appropriately.
On
But we
the
do have that on
excessive
some.
mud, it
Yes.
actually is not discouraged, it says you can't.
Prohibited.
It's prohibited, so are we discouraging it or are we prohibiting it?
Prohibited,
Okay, cause to me that's different, cause
you're right.
how, I don't know, that's rough. How are you gonna control that?
So I've gone all the way out there to that trail, and you tell me it's discouraged.
I'm gonna walk on it.
I'm okay getting dirty.
How muddy is mud?
What mud is
Excessive
mud is, yeah. Well, you know, you'll end up 6
If it
inches taller.
sticks- If it sticks, it's excessive. Well, that's it.
So, and most trail users are aware of this as a common practice, and most trail users are conscientious of it, and
Safety, right?
Correct.
Walk with slick and muddy and,
so most trail users understand that.
On that, I was just looking at this and I didn't catch this when I was reviewing it. The building modifying trails is prohibited. I don't want that to impede our development of trails, so we need to work on
Other
that
by
language.
authorized individuals or something like that, yeah.
So let's clean that up.
Attorney.
And obviously,
He's
we're
looking
gonna,
at
we're
bikes.
gonna,
We're not working on that.
He's shopping right now.
we'll meet with Todd and Matt.
He's buying a bike.
And we'll have more discussion with them about it and codify it.
You're trying to
before
add
we
more
go back.
words.
You take it out of one end, you're gonna add it.
Okay, so that's all I had as far as the ordinance updates.
wait, I had mine. I
Sure.
did talk to everybody but you,
Yeah.
sorry, you were gone, yeah. Section 7-8-7, you guys added a word in there with dog leashes, you can put physical in there.
Yeah,
And so, I had, and this, I don't know where this really, applies, but, so this is just general parks, so is this on trails too? Yeah, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that
so,
applies to trails.
so yeah, I've had, back when we were looking at the other ordinance for animal enforcement, had several people reach out to me that are equestrian type people that had issues with, I can't take my dog on my trail ride.
Okay.
If he's on an e-collar, if you put this in there.
Okay.
And so I reached out to council about this, talked to Nathan a little bit about it. There's an example of an ordinance in a city that has kind of taken a look at this, cause I understand both sides of that, right? It's like, cause you don't want any aggression, things need to be under control when you're on a city property, city functions and things like that, but if you're, a dog owner who has taken the time and resources to train your dog to respond well on an e-collar, why would we prohibit them from allowing that benefit to them if they can demonstrate that they can keep their dog under control? And so, there's a process, I would propose that we do a process that, allows them to come in, demonstrate their dog and get a permit for an electronic collar to do precisely that. So, and I talked to you guys a little bit about that, maybe I explained it very good. But I don't wanna penalize people that, whose dogs will behave without being on a physical leash, if they're on an electronic leash, from taking their dog on a trail ride.
So if I understand correctly, Sherry, from our conversation, this is not a process the city would do. This is a certification that they can go and do on their own, right?
Well, the ordinance is both, I mean, I don't know where you would go get that. I think that the process that is had in the other city is they bring it in and they demonstrate to your,
Animal
animal
services.
services that their dog can perform under with distractions, that they can have different things and they can demonstrate so that they get a license for that. Now, I thought about this, I'm like, oh, how nightmare is it gonna be for animal control when they have 800 of these? But honestly, how many people do you really think are gonna be able to come in and demonstrate that their dog
10 or 15 probably.
exactly, I just don't think it's gonna swamp us in reality,
But
But I-
Todd's dogs aren't.
but I think it would allow an opportunity for people to, I just don't wanna take away something if they've prepared and are responsible.
Well, and there are very few who could actually train their dogs well enough
Yeah,
to
and there-
pass it.
And quite frankly, we've done a really good job of this, no offense, but it's how it goes when you turn urban. We've done a really good job of pushing out equestrian people anyway. There's not a lot of people that's still here in the city that will ride on our trails. with
But there are a
horses.
lot of people who think their dogs are great on that
Exactly,
e-collar.
exactly,
Well,
but they'd have to
Listen, I'd
demonstrate.
rather have a 40-pound lab on an e-collar than my dog on a leash.
Well,
Just saying.
your dog on a leash or a child with that, your dog
Yeah,
on a
my
leash.
child would
Yeah,
monkey
so
my
it's
dog on a leash.
so it's
is-
kind of a misconception that just because they are on a physical leash, you have control of them. Anyway, I think that we should open an opportunity for somebody that can demonstrate that they can control their dog to have an opportunity to have a.
So question, what sparked that word adding to the ordinance?
To
Were we
add
having this
physical
I think
issue?
it's just the visual cue, right?
Well, and I think, at least for me, when we had this conversation, I mean, I have several different types of e-collars for different purposes, right? I have the invisible fence, stay out of this area, I got one for barking, these shelter dogs, somebody talked me into getting, right? One for barking, one that is a training collar, right, and it just vibrates on their neck, right? So you push the button and, so that's the kind of collar that it is, right? It is really hard to train them properly to just use those, right? So as we had this discussion, if it's all right, this is kind of my thought process, is I've worked hard with these dogs and they're really good with me on my leash, but if another dog approaches, they are super defensive. That Pyrenees will kill any dog that comes near me. Like, he's so defensive of me, it's not even funny, and they might just be coming to say hi, and their owner thinks it's okay, and I'm like, no, and they can't get him back, like it's all over. Right, so like I like the idea that they would have to come in and demonstrate it every year, right? And you can pay a fee and that sort of thing, and my concern was I don't want them to be overrun, but I think you're right, there's not gonna
Well,
be that many
and I
that.
think there's ways to do it where you could say, there's a time you could come once a month or something during this couple hours and demonstrate it. Other than that, you have to wait till next month, right? It's not something we should just be doing.
all
So
the
I
time?
would have some there are private organizations where you get your CDX and those kind of things, and having been a dog
That's more
handler
what I
for
was
a
thinking
lot of
about,
years, the e-collars, you have to be really, really good, cause you can screw up a dog
Yeah.
and the dog, it actually has the opposite effect.
Become aggressive,
No.
right?
Yeah, and they'll actually go after people versus coming back to you, which is the idea of like, God's finger at a distance, right? You can make the dog comply. I would say, and I would ask Todd this, if we're certifying people that their dog can recall, which is what it's called, and they don't and bite somebody, or we have a problem, even on city property or otherwise, they're gonna say, well, do we have any liability in that?
I think
would be
that
the question.
opens the door for litigation. Are we immune from something like that? Could we get out of a case? Probably, but that does open that door of, we might get a suit that
I mean, I have
makes that
canine
allegation.
handler instructors that work here. I don't know that our animal services people are that.
Is
But that would be my concern.
is that different if they have to go do an already recognized certification
third party?
course with a
Yeah.
third party? Is there that same liability if we're allowing,
I
for
would-
accepting that?
Yeah, I would feel better if
I
they,
think
if they
it
went and got a
reduces it for
CDX
sure.
somewhere else or something like that and brought it to us and said, see, here it is, and we give them another little chip that says, here you go, your dog
Yeah,
can
a
be
little
offline.
tag to hang on their
Then that's
collar.
separate from us, and I would feel better about that, I think from a liability standpoint.
And that would simplify the internal
But,
process
yeah.
for us too.
Well, for sure,
Yeah, for sure.
But there's as many people that don't like dogs as like them, right? And you're walking through the park and there's not a physical restraint to an animal that comes near you.
Oh,
And I tell
freak
people
out.
all the time, oh, my dog won't bite you.
Should we exclude it for everything but trails? Or is that?
Yeah, I don't
Trails
think,
is kind of the place though where,
But yeah,
as Sherry
that's-
points out, they
That's where
most
they
people
want
their
it, you know,
dogs
that's what I'm
with
saying, like, in any other
be
public,
prohibited
open
up
park
here.
space,
so
it's.
just,
yeah,
if you're
it's
just a regular park, if you're hanging out
But Sherry,
at
you've
a
asked
park,
this, you've asked this question before, and I think it's an appropriate question, is why is why is an equestrian rider's right to have their dog off a leash trump a non-dog liker to be able to walk on the trail free from the
Having
threat
a
of a
dog.
dog, right?
Yeah.
And those are two things we have to balance, so I think that the compromise is saying, you have to have a physical leash unless you have a certification that says you can control your dog off a leash, and is that,
And we can
Simple,
incorporate
right?
that into our registration process where they can provide that paperwork, we can approve it and say, okay, some.
Every year when they license their
Yeah,
dog,
some official, professional
like that.
person acting in some authority that we recognize has said, yes, your dog. can
and
go
I
on
like
the
that
leash.
because Teddy and I talked about this, I don't wanna institute another
Another fee, yeah.
either, it's like,
Or
I don't know,
process, yeah.
feed to death, but if they brought that in, and there was a process for that,
And that wouldn't require a fee, they just need to upload it like they do the rabies.
No, but if we had a
Yeah.
training, or we had this or that, or.
That would be a fee, yeah, if our people are having to
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
that we would have to.
Question, how compliant are our current dog owners throughout the city? Are they pretty compliant on
They're
registration?
better. Sarah was in my office talking to me and she saw a dog run through Crane Park, a leash, and whatever we were talking about ended, cause she ran out the door to go educate them on how that was gonna be.
Yeah, I
So,
think those issues.
They're really good. They do a lot of education, but they
It's
cite
like
people.
registering and
Yep.
rabies and vaccines.
We're getting,
I'd
it's
say
hard
as far
to
as
tell.
registry,
For sure.
It was really the wild, wild west for a long time, and we didn't have a strong animal control presence. Now we do, so things are changing.
People are complying more.
People are becoming compliant, yeah.
I think that'd be cool. I mean, if we could find a couple well, it could be any institution as long as they have that certification, right? Or that type of certification.
So that's not in this current, and the ordinance as it exists now just does not include physical, so that's something maybe we want to include, we can include it. If that's, we can put some wording in and then you can decide how you want to adopt.
I'll look into that
I still like the
process.
physical leash unless you have,
Yeah, I
No,
know.
Correct, and that's
1000%.
what I think.
I just
how we
wanted
would
to
write
build
it.
in an exception so that there could be a pathway for somebody to do that if indeed they can demonstrate that they're, it's hard either way, I totally get it, because it's like, it's even a mental perception if somebody's on a leash, but literally.
Jogging, running,
Yeah,
anything on
Well, and
trails,
I think
even mountain
there's-
biking.
There's another issue to consider, for instance, at Crane Park, we have this happen on occasion during the Halloween haunt thing. Even if somebody was certified, would we want a dog running around
No.
with a leash
No.
on? Because the perception of that's
That's why I
wrong,
think maybe
right?
you have to look at it even on like,
What
It
areas would it be?
excludes everything,
like, I
yeah.
don't, like
Primitive
trails.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
primitive
primitive
trails,
trails.
yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
Well, and all of this is, it's an animal, and they can act unpredictably and.
Yeah, on the
different
leash or
times,
off the
and-
leash.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
It's a 2-year-old that's gonna make a decision based like a toddler, so.
Yeah.
Good
Hey,
idea.
guys, stop talking.
They grab a dog by the cheeks and that's that,
Yeah.
right? So,
Okay, so when we bring it back, we'll come up with some verbiage that allows for a potential permit,
Anthony, I'll have Debbie look into all of that and get with you on
that'd
it.
be great, thank you. Okay, we'll jump into the Black Ridge Reservoir stuff, like I was saying before. We're gonna bring this stuff back to you next month. I just wanted to get you this information just for your digestion. Back in August, Wendy talked about some of the issues we've been having with parking up there at Black Ridge Reservoir. In that meeting, you guys discussed some potential options for parking, so I'm just bringing back a couple of options that we've explored here in the last little bit. Mainly expanding parking up there and then some paid parking solutions, so we'll just look at those just real quick. Blake was able to draw us up some potential plans for some parking expansion up there. This is one option that we have where we would basically push, we've got open land over here against this south fence line here, which we could push the existing parking that's right here down to the south more, which would open up this whole travel lane and allow us to add, 54 new stalls along the inside portion here. So that's one option for expansion. Cost on that, Blake's estimate there was about 600,000 for something like that.
Oh my gosh.
The next option for parking expansion would be an additional parking lot down below the dam at Black Ridge, right on the corner of Rose
Oh, that's
Summit and Briar
interesting.
Park. So this adds an additional 25 spaces down there, but at an additional cost of almost 800,000.
25.
I think it's inevitable, we might have to do both options at some point in time, but.
So those are the expanded parking options that we have right now. Obviously, they all, they both
Start
come
collecting
with
for
a price
parking and
tag.
save it.
So
These estimates were put together when the construction
Don't
costs were
swear,
super high, they're
that's
coming
better
down,
than
but
me.
not that much.
Yeah.
I think one plus to this is maybe you could potentially designate this as your trailhead
Trail,
parking.
Yeah, that's actually really cool.
Right, versus, and you could separate your trailhead parking from Black Ridge parking, which has always caused some consternation up there a little bit, so.
Put a collection box
Is
out
there,
there.
is there other, go back to that page.
I like that trail.
Is there other options to maybe doing other park space down there? I know it's not programmed or even thought of yet, but
Expanded
is there?
parking fund.
It's just get that big drainage ditch right
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Yeah, this
That's
is all,
not
this
It's
is all
really,
drainage out
it's
of a
pretty
tank.
steep too,
That's a
yeah.
pump station.
Can we put another lake there?
Oh,
Okay, so
Now you're thinking.
the other paid
why
parking
not?
options we have are a
Turn it
pay
into
gate or a
spring
toll
or-
gate, similar to like what you would see at the airport or downtown at a parking garage, right? You pull in, you pull your ticket out, go through the gate, and then you can either pay as you go in, or probably the best option would be pay as you exit. I guess the downfall of this is they're fairly expensive, $20,000 to $50,000, as the systems we've been looking at are closer probably on the upper end of that, so $50,000 probably. Another benefit of this is they're fully automated, all right, they don't require anybody to, you don't have to have anybody there to manage.
Really, car washes tore some out.
Right?
Seriously?
That price includes the security camera to catch the license plate for everybody that breaks the arm as they go.
There's all sorts of downfalls, but, another plus there is it doesn't require any monitoring by parking enforcement, right? They just pay as they enter or exit, so you don't have parking enforcement having to monitor.
Is there, Anthony, is there a way to limit if the parking lot's full? How
So-
does the gate know?
Yeah,
it's
I
full?
talked to them about that. They said the best thing to do is probably, when you pull in a parking garage, you'll usually get the first half an hour free or something like that. We would probably have to have them take a ticket, and maybe the first 10 minutes are free. And that would allow them a chance to drive through and exit once they realize there aren't any parking spots. If we had staff up there and we knew it was full, we'd go out and probably block it off and detour them around or
Could
just
we
put our
not-
signs out like we normally do.
On the available spaces, could you not pull that many tickets? Once that many tickets per day or per?
Yeah,
and
you
then
could potentially do that. The only problem with that is
Programming, right?
you would have to pull up to that, ticket booth.
And then there's no exit?
And then to get them out, they'd have to kind of back down that road a little bit. So
Okay, no,
that's,
yeah.
that's the only problem with that.
Calculate if people have left or.
No, cause you pay for your ticket when you leave, yeah. So-
Yeah, but
No, yeah.
if you say
Traffic,
you get the
yeah.
first 10 minutes free, you can go in and put.
I'm just thinking of, if I had 10 minutes free, I'm dropping all my stuff and cooler
There's
off
an
and then
easy
we don't park
solution
on the
to all
street.
this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Then you go get a ticket for parking on the street.
Yeah.
I think you just make this just like $1 cheaper than what the ticket is.
Yeah, and you can charge per day, you can charge per hour, you can set it up to charge however you want on this, but
Well, I think you charge
That's-
per hour up to a maximum per day.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, like airport,
You
yeah.
put all the money in the pool, so you pay for your next parking lot.
So that's one option. The other option, and this is an option that I personally like, is kind of a parking app, which you see kind of downtown as you're parking. They have QR codes that you can scan for your
Yeah.
parking space that you park in, and then you just pay on your phone via an app. The nice thing about this is the cost to get into this is it's virtually free to set up. You just contract with one of
Pay per
these,
fee.
you just contract with one of these companies. They'll come out and put up all the signage that you need. They do charge a small fee per transaction, but then, after that, it's pretty simple to set up.
But we can set the rates then?
Yes, we can set the rates. Again, we can do it by hour. We can just do it by
How do
a
you,
daily fee, however we want to set that up.
how do you enforce that?
So that one,
Yeah,
that's gotta be
yeah,
enforced
you
by
gotta be
parking
enforced.
enforcement, whether
Are we
they,
staffing that?
what's that?
Are we staffing it currently?
Staffing,
Uh,
parking
the-
enforcement?
No, just the park itself.
Yes,
Yes, okay.
but this would probably
This would
be
be
enforced through
enforcement.
code enforcement.
Community service.
It
So
has to
they
go
would
up there every
either-
so often and do a drive-through and
Once an hour or
check
whatever.
which numbers
yeah.
are.
Well, the app should tell you which parking space should be open. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of the things, if there's a car there and it obviously hasn't paid or it's overtime, it's a little easier than.
Red and green, yeah.
So most of these systems integrate with a license plate recognition software. And if we had that type of a system, they could just drive through and it'd scan license plates and let you know when you hit a car that
How
hadn't
much
paid.
are one of
We
those?
use a license plate scanner?
Yeah, repo people do it all the time.
If we didn't have that system, do we currently have a LPR system? Didn't think so, but, so if we didn't have that system, the company would just produce a spreadsheet that they could log into and it would let you know which car had paid and which.
We looked
which
at
had-
one for parking enforcement.
They're
We
fairly,
looked at this program, it's a pretty good program.
Yeah.
It's easy for them to use, it's super quick for them to get citations out.
so,
And that way it's not, you have to have cash or card or something, just.
It doesn't, yeah, just use your phone, yeah.
Let most people
We're
do
going
it.
digital anyways.
And we don't have to deal with them paying or
Gates
putting
or-
change in something.
Right,
or-
yeah, you don't have to worry
it's
about
just-
paper running
Do they
out
have,
of tickets.
I know sometimes they still have a kiosk.
yeah, sometimes they will, that's
Yeah.
an option you can have to have a pay kiosk. You can walk up and pay with a card at a kiosk or
Yeah.
do it on the phone.
Yeah.
Which might be an option that we'd have to look into. Cell service up there at Black Ridge, at least on Verizon, is not great.
This is where your fiber would
So,
be super handy.
Yeah.
we may have to look at a kiosk, for some people.
Some of these, I don't know if this one has, a few of them have that you mount the camera and it'll tell you how many spaces are open.
Yeah.
Right? It knows. If you go to the parking garage at the airport, right, it'll tell you how many spaces, that's just an AI and a camera filming down there and saying, here are the spaces that are open.
Again, they can get pretty sophisticated and depending on how much money you want to dump into
Honestly,
the system.
I think the least expensive, least intrusive, easiest way to get something up and start charging people for parking. I like this idea, we don't have to construct
There's not any
anything or add
construction
anything
fees,
or
yeah.
whatever, and if you don't pay, or you park on the street, you're getting a ticket, right? It's the same thing, it's just,
we still have that study out or that group that's helping us reconfigure our parking areas up there and what's open and closed and who helped us do the Black Ridge stuff last time?
With,
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Ted.
yeah.
Didn't we do a study? Can you give them a
Oh, we
information?
did an informal when they came in
Okay.
the park. As far as the parking permit area
Yeah,
around,
the
yeah,
parking
that's gonna
permit.
come out.
We're doing a
Okay. Survey, okay.
Oh,
We
okay.
just
I knew it
got
was
the
something,
results
I just didn't know,
yesterday.
yeah.
Is it, I think it's gonna, enhance the problem of people parking outside of the park.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, they push them out.
Yeah.
But if you have the permit process still, then they're in violation.
Another
right?
parking.
Putting tickets out
enforcement.
there.
It's
But
again,
it
it's
just
enforcement.
increases
none of it,
enforcement costs.
everything we do up there is gonna be an enforcement issue, right?
Yes, yes.
It doesn't matter, it's, if they're gonna
Unless
park here illegally, they're gonna
don't
park
park
on the street.
Everything you do in
illegally.
law enforcement is pushing.
So how do,
Right.
Just use it as a
what happens.
secondary one.
I think
Enforcement
parking's
here, it moves there.
a minimal inconvenience fee for if you're gonna use that facility. I was thinking like, if we incentivize our citizens by offering a discounted parking permit or fee or code or something, but I think we're paying $3 a day, that's insignificant. Or $3, $2 an hour, up to $6 or whatever it may be, right? But, yeah, I think this is a good route.
Okay, well, and then I guess another nice thing to my last point here is that if it works successfully up there at Black Ridge, we can look at utilizing it in other areas where we need,
Butterfield,
yeah.
during
where we
rodeo.
could Potential uses, so.
Well, I think if we're gonna charge a fee, it should at least cover all the costs of enforcement.
I know, yeah. Limited.
Not with really
But,
active neighborhood.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I drive up there, I mean, I'm up there all the time, I walk around the reservoir, my kids grew up there, we're driving out of our friends' houses, all this stuff. There's cars parked on the street everywhere, all the time. I mean, it's, so people complaining that somebody's parking on their street, well, they're going to the reservoir and parking in front of my house. Public street, they're parked, I mean, it's like, what's the problem necessarily, right? I mean, if they're obstructing traffic and there's problems, I can see where we do that, but just, a random resident or a visitor parking in the street, on a public street, I don't understand why that's,
Well, I think a lot of
This-
issues came in.
why this is the end of the world anyway, right?
And they picnic in the front yard or they do
Well,
other things like that.
That's a different issue, right? That's not a parking issue, that's a trespassing issue, right? But
Well,
this idea that we're gonna have, go
kind-
through all this
kind
thing
of.
about permits and not permits and you can park here, you put it, I don't know, it just seems,
So,
you say it's a no parking zone and then somebody has a friend come over and parks in the street. How does an enforcement officer know if it's
They're
a
permitted.
violator or
They have
permitted?
They're
to
permitted.
provide permits.
They can
so
see the permit.
having been at this
So what's-
table when this was done and having voted against it, right? It has eliminated the majority of the problems. I mean, we had
It really
huge
has.
problems because there were just way too many people up there. People couldn't get into their own driveways because people were parking all along in front of their homes. They were peeing in their bushes, right? They're knocking on their door asking for condiments and things all day long. I mean, I'm not kidding. We had hundreds of people coming in here, like every city council meeting from the neighborhood up there, complaining about all these things. Like it was a huge nuisance that the city created there. So nobody wanted to take away the swimming, right? Because people like swimming. This was the option decided on at the time. So you have the permit program, so the people who are living there can, and there's a way to enforce it, right? It's not perfect. Yeah, I'm having a family party. I wanna have more people over here, but then my neighbor's gonna complain because I'm parking in front of his driveway or in front of his house, and his people with their permits that they paid for can't park. Like, there's just unintended consequences to literally everything. The core issue was overuse of a facility that was put in the wrong location. It's the wrong use in the wrong location, and the unintended consequences of that were severe for those residents. And the only way to curtail the overuse was to limit the use somehow, right? Help the people that live there. It limited the people using it. It's more manageable now, but it's still a good amenity that people wanna go and use. We're always gonna have this tug and pull unless the use changes. I'm fine keeping the use there, but there is no perfect solution. To Steve's point, there's unintended consequences of everything. We went through all of these things. That's why I'm like, just don't have swimming. It's still a park. You can still wade in there, put the little buoy thing across there, right? You can wade out to this level, whatever. It's not gonna be the same draw and people can still use it. Change the use and that changes, but if we're gonna allow that use, then we're gonna have these issues. We looked at all of these, the only thing that's different is this app thing that what didn't exist, 10 years ago or however long, 7 years ago. It was my first year, 7 years ago. It was that first summer, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, this is what I'm gonna have to do as parking. But we went through all these things, the parking, all of it, and what we looked at with charging for parking was the cost of enforcing it and making it fair, right? It was gonna be way more than we would ever collect. And then there's the fairness issue. When we were having these conversations, we had residents coming in from all over. What do you mean you're gonna charge me? I pay taxes. I pay a park fee. You're gonna charge me more money to go use a park just because I live on the north side of Harriman and I don't live up there? Those people get to use it for free. They want a private reservoir. Like all this stuff is going to resurface.
The most effective thing we did was control parking with police officers, but it was $50 an hour for 3 cops.
So
It was a lot of money, right, that we were spending a day.
Well, and then on top of that was our Blackridge staff, which were manning the gate and telling people that they couldn't come in because it was full.
And these are teenagers or,
But it was
They
effective,
got,
right?
they got abused.
It helped manage the problem. It was just an extremely expensive way to manage that problem.
I mean,
This
that,
would be a much
And
less
we, and
expensive.
to be honest, we did that during COVID, right? We had to limit, we were in that phase where we were still limiting everything, and it worked really well, it was just very expensive, so.
Yeah.
We'll have some more discussion on this next month, like I said, so we don't need to travel down that road any further, I don't think, but we'll save it for next month. But we'll bring back the park ordinance updates in a general meeting then at a future date, and then we'll talk about this more next month.
One more thing just to keep just start thinking about for the next meeting. We do have a concessionaire that's interested in renting, leasing the building. So just think about maybe some of the concerns, issues, benefits that
are they
you might-
also providing rentals?
They're intending to provide rentals and probably something like snow cones or sodas,
For the same person we brought.
What have we talked about this, right? Like,
I've had a few people that have
There've been several
contacted
that
me.
have approached us.
Put it out to
Oh,
bid
sounds
You
or?
would go out to RFP.
Yeah,
Todd and I
that's
had
all.
a
You do an
conversation.
RFP, they get a concession license, a license to do a concession there for a set amount of time.
Right.
Then they have to renew it.
Yeah.
I don't know how we go with this.
Yeah.
We shut down swimming.
yeah.
And it has been, especially the last 2 years, has been really hard to find staff that are willing to work up there. We've had a really hard time. We don't have a hard time out here, we have a really hard time up there.
Quench had 70 applicants.
They probably don't
Maybe
do
we should
use
go
like
quench
our
it up
people.
Maybe.
Thanks for that one,
Thanks,
Anthony,
Anthony.
jeez.
The next one can go as long as you all, cause this is really, Blake, I think, has a picture.
Slides
2.5,
Two
this
pictures.
is the Harriman Preserve Project.
Harem Preserve, really, the intent of this item is for you all to talk. I know the developer has approached different counselors. They have not necessarily been engaging with staff more recently. They've been just going to you, and it was this concept that you all should talk, so you make sure you're all on the same page of what you've heard and what's
It's
going
coming to
on.
sit down.
Just close that. Alternate.
So, Blake put some pictures up here, we have, I think the blue would be, we're calling Laguna Point, it's that lower part. Frankly, it's developable right now.
Did you use
Zone and
paint?
everything, it's ready to go.
Zone, it's ready, the green is Laguna, the Pac-Man piece there is Malibu, or I guess that's a C.
I guess water's holding
I was gonna say, what Pac-Man did
Water,
you play as
water's
a
got
kid?
that one right there, water availability is.
Water
holding it up.
availability is holding it.
So really, it's, how do you want to proceed? They've put in a request for an MDA and several changes. We had started to bring some stuff forward. They asked us to hold it back, but we're also hearing that they're telling people we are holding them up as city staff. And we're not. We're looking for some direction from council. How do you want us to proceed with this project?
Is there an active, so there's an active application in?
Yes.
Okay.
They're holding it back.
There's
They
a,
have requested to hold it back, but they're also.
I think I can bottom line this pretty fast.
Go.
They're wanting us to grant density up there substantially more than it currently is. Which I think we're all generally, in a vacuum, not exactly thrilled with that idea. However, we'd be willing to consider it if there's three things. Number one, we talked about, and these aren't in necessarily order, but number one is, what do the neighbors around think? And we've heard from our friends at Camp Williams, they'd prefer that not be residential housing because of
That's
the
the
potential
letter,
complaints it has,
right,
right? They
to
sent
the
us a
city.
letter saying that. Number two was, we talked about how in the heck could we possibly afford to provide services up there? And they have yet to demonstrate any solutions that have been endorsed or verified or proven to work. And that's their responsibility to do that, not ours. The third thing that we talked about was, in exchange for that kind of density, what is the benefit to the city for making that kind of a zoning change? And everything has been maybe, possibly, we've talked to somebody, There's no guarantees or promises in that. There's no amenities that are guaranteed to be a part of this. And until they can satisfy those things, develop it the way it's zoned. Bottom line, that's it.
So
It's
I've been a
really
broken
easy.
record on this one. The only one of those that matters to me, I don't even wanna talk about the amenities or even what the neighbors want.
How to provide services.
Until you pay for cost of services, so full disclosure on that one, there, at least on my part, the conversations I've been part of, no progress. We met with them, Lauren and I met with them, talked about an
Special service, SSD.
Specials, right? We talked about some other mechanisms rather than the special service district and the differences, and that was really good. I understood things so much better after that. But what we found out since that meeting was that it wouldn't cover the ongoing costs that
It's only like a 5-year period or
that
something.
we're
Yeah.
concerned about.
Yeah.
I communicated that back to him. I said, that doesn't appear to be the mechanism that would alleviate at least my concerns. I'm open, as always, I'm open to any ideas, but I think we communicated pretty clearly in that meeting that it's not on staff to find a way to make that work for them. To your point, Steve, like, they need to bring the costs, and until they do,
So
I don't wanna waste time talking about Camp
I
Williams.
have one
Or
possible
anything
solution.
else.
There's only one other way to do it. But I don't, they'd have to create a HOA and charge everybody a private fee and then contract for services up there.
And then
Yeah, but they can dissolve the HOA.
But if they
Sure.
dissolve the
Yeah,
HOA,
it's-
we don't
yeah.
provide services. I
I
mean,
guess my question is
That's it.
technically,
It's like we
have
put it in so they
a
can't
legal
dissolve it.
process
It's, we are the only
that
ones
we
that
are
can do it.
bound by. So where are we at in the legal process that we're bound by? I'm 100% open to having this come before us, which it should if there's an open application. Are we stalling it or have they asked to delay it?
We put it on for action. They asked to pull it.
Because we were gonna have these conversations.
So
Right.
it's still sitting there, but frankly,
they
they're
asked us to
also
push
out there
forward.
telling the community that we're holding it up.
So
So
the question from staff to us is, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to bring it for an official action from council? Do we wanna communicate back to them, look, do you have anything else for us to consider? Do you want to just, cause they can just pull the application, right? They can just say, never mind.
They could pull it, they could submit more information, we haven't received anything yet for.
So they push pause and then they're waiting on us to say go again, is what it sounds like.
So we put it on the agenda, draft agenda, and said we're gonna come and have it for decision. I got a call from the applicant, said, don't do that, I have some meetings next week with council members, with camp and some other stakeholders. I said, okay, he said, I'll call you back in 2 weeks and let you know. And that was
2 months
months
ago,
ago.
yeah.
And he called me back probably about a month after that and said that everything was going great and that they were gonna submit some new stuff and we were, haven't received anything or heard anything since then.
If I may, suggestion to make this quicker, right, is we've had this discussion, I think we're all in agreement that we have no new information to act on. I don't know of any other possible solutions.
I don't like the HOA idea, I know.
I don't
that's
like
an
it.
option.
But it would have to be,
Because they could dissolve it, so
But-
anyways.
But to that point, it's on them to bring
Yeah, it's
us
not our-
something like that, right, for us to consider. So I think we communicate back to them, do you have anything else for us to consider?
Or is it ready to go on agenda?
If not, we can put it on an agenda for you, or you can withdraw the application, whatever you wanna do.
But for me, I mean, to your point, my three things, I know you're not worried about it too, I'm worried about those other two, until they
Well,
resolve,
I
for
am.
me.
well, the
I am
reason,
worried about those,
part of-
but
part of the
not until we
reason why-
cross the first hurdle.
right, but part of the reason those came up was the insinuation that was made to me in a conversation with the developers was that staff had been told by Camp Williams that Camp Williams was completely fine with it and everything was great and you were withholding that information from us as members of the council. Well, that's obviously not true, right? And then there was this idea that somehow you guys that staff was somehow not being clear with us about what the solutions were to provide special services up there, about which is not true either. The only thing holding this up is their desire to move forward according to the direction we've given them. That's it. You can move forward and develop it with, 300 or 400 houses or whatever it is. Go for it.
So I think it's fair to go back to them and say, you wanted to wait because you had these meetings, councils had this work meeting, said, yep, we've had those meetings. We don't see anything for us to really, that changes anything for us. Do you want us to have official action or do you want to withdraw? Which one?
Yep, we can go do that, and I think the last direction we had from council was don't spend any more time on this, let them bring something to us, so
Right.
we're
Still the
definitely.
same.
Okay.
Still the same?
We'll make the phone call, but.
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you, everybody, look for motion to go into closed then.
Motion to temporarily recess city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purpose of, to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation, the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property is provided by Utah Code annotated section 52-4-205.
Motion by Steve,
Second.
second by Teddy, Steve,
Yes.
Terry, Teddy, Jared? Yes. We're gonna close, thank you, everybody.
He said yes, but he meant no.
I said, I guess.
You know, I really invest this